please join me for the. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with justice.
Roll call. Mayor Lindsay,
Here,
Mayor Pro Tem Howe,
there,
Councilman Humbert,
here,
Councilman Weeks,
here.
Councilman Crane.
Here.
We have a quorum. You may proceed.
At this time, I'd ask for a motion to approve the agenda.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
And at this time, I'd ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda, which comprises the minutes of the 7/12/24 minutes.
Make a motion to approve a consent agenda for the 7/12/2024 minutes.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
I'll abstain since I wasn't here for that meeting.
At this time, did we have anybody that wanted to speak on any items not pertaining to this agenda? Mr. Maloney?
Mayor, Councilman. Coming in front of you guys tonight to discuss the tort claim that has been filed against the village on my behalf.
Okay. I'll give you 3 minutes.
Okay. Just so there's clarification on it, this was approved by village, the plans, everything were submitted. I don't know if you guys have copies of it. There's actually been, on April 11th, it was approved, all the plans, everything was submitted, there was no issues. I went and got state permit, I've got all the permits, everything's in a row. All the pages are on the application, state approved it, I've had 5 inspections since then. And roughly 45 days later, I got a citation, where'd it go? It's, Chapter 11C4 stating, citation to, basically stop work, or if I kept working, there would be a stop order work placed. And so just coming in front of you guys to let you know that there has been, legal action taken, because of the 45 days later, the shutdown, everything was approved, I went through all the steps. So I'm just, if there was any questions or anything, that you guys had, because I don't know if you looked at it. And then now I got a letter in the mail, from the village insurance, I guess New Mexico Self-Insurers Fund saying they've got 7 days to respond, so. Just wanted to lay it out there, if you guys have any questions or concerns or. Went through the steps, and I know you guys have known for the last 4 years that I've been here, I've been real vocal on going through, getting permits, making sure they're filled out right. The biggest issue I have is if there was issues, I mean, it sat there for like a month before any work was even done on it. If there was issues, it should have been addressed before it was approved, not 45 days later after the village signed off on it, state signed off on it. I mean, I've had framing, plumbing, foundation, I've had 4 or 5 inspections, so, it was marked, everything was sent, there was communication back and forth because I'm actually in R3, which on the R3 zoning, and this is another issue, the discrepancy in the village and the zonings, I'm in R3, I'm also in an overlay district. So there's the difference of 45 and 50. R3 says 45, the citation I was served, so shows 50 feet. So there's just inconsistencies. So just wanted to lay that out there for y'all so you can understand it.
Okay, thank you. Was there anybody else that needed to speak this evening? Moving on to announcements and proclamations by the council. Anybody have anything this evening? Okay. Moving on to staff reports. I don't know that we have anything for this meeting. Shay? Any other?
Good evening, council, mayor. clerk and manager. I'm just gonna give an update on what's been going on, in the Parks and Rec Department, Community Center, Allen Fields and such. First of all, day camp is in its last 2 weeks and it's gone pretty good. We have about an average of 8 to 12 kids. Trash to Treasures had a record year and we're very pleased, record turnout. Music from Angel Fire will arrive August 12th and they'll be there through August 30th. The upper lot paving prep work has begun and the actual paving is supposed to start Thursday, of course, weather permitting. Phase 3 started this week, which was, getting the playground lot ready and then the west side of the building, the roof extension. They're starting with the roof extension first, so they can hopefully be completed before Music from Angel Fire gets here. The equipment, playground equipment is set to be delivered late September and October, with installation in October, probably later October. The old structures were finally removed today, thanks to Mr. Epler and his team, because they've been sitting there for a while, because they're very heavy. The softball tournaments have gone very well. The 2-day one had about 200 people with 13 teams in it. This weekend, we had a 2-day tournament and it was canceled, now to be held on August 24th through the 25th. And Moreno Valley High School will start their soccer season August 12th with about 5 home games there. And then lastly, the website, the village government website was, the revamping of it was launched on Thursday. And I think it looks a lot better and it's a lot more better links where you can find things easier. So take a look at it. I'm still fixing some pictures on it and stuff, but besides that, I think it looks a lot better. And lastly, the app is next, the village app, so we'll be working on that. Any questions?
Just why was the softball tournament canceled?
Didn't have teams. I'm guessing there was another tournament, a big tournament somewhere. So, yeah, you just didn't get enough teams.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, council, mayor, manager and clerk. I just want to give a short update on the finance department. So the third quarter report was submitted and approved. Our interim budget has been approved. The term for FY25 has been approved. And is available if you want to download it from the state auditor's website. The finance team is working on updating policies and procedures for this year. And we're also working on implementing the short-term rental software. Some of what's holding up the implementation is the ordinances and approval of the letters to send out. Any questions?
So our budget has been accepted,
The interim budget has been approved, yeah.
approved, and then, and we're also current now on our audits.
Yes, FY23 audit was approved and we're working on the FY24.
Thank you, Heather. Move on now to committee reports. I don't know if anybody has anything to report.
I will say the Workforce Housing Committee will be ready to, we've been working with Manager Weir to get our employer survey sent out. We got caught in some of the IT snafus of last week that were nationwide, so unfortunately that was a little bit of a struggle. But we're gonna get that sent out here very shortly. We anticipate approving the employee survey at our next Workforce Housing Committee meeting, and have been working on governance documents in preparation of having units be ready to rent.
So, pardon me, Streets and Infrastructure Committee had its second meeting and looks very positive. We've got a good committee and they're moving out on a lot of good things.
And I'll just add that our airport committee has yet to convene. We keep pushing it back because we're still waiting to hear for an announcement of the rural aviation air service expansion grant. And so at this time, we just want to we don't wanna rock the boat. It's still something that we would like to explore, but we definitely wanna get the news on that grant, which is, we were told would be at the end of the month. I will say that, a few weeks ago, Mark Manley with the resort, Commissioner Trujillo, who is the Colfax County, Commission Chairperson, myself and Senator Pete Campos met with, the Governor's Chief of Staff and the, Transportation Secretary, to discuss the benefits of, this grant coming to Angel Fire. So we're in high hopes that we do see something there.
Comprehensive Plan Committee is moving forward. The chair and secretary have been meeting with department heads and with administration. They'll be continue to do that. Our next meeting is the 29th.
Moving on, don't we have any old business? Moving on to new business. I would ask for a motion for discussion action item. Here, resolution 2024-55, granting a conditional use permit.
I'll make a motion for discussion action, approve resolution 2024-55, granting a conditional use permit.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Manager Weir. You have an application before you that was submitted. The property owner applicant is actually here as well. They'd like to testify. From a plan perspective, the application qualifies for the criteria needed to even apply, which is at least a minimum over an acre. The percentage of the second dwelling above the garage is less than the main unit. There was a comment from AFPO when they did their initial review that they wanted the building connected with the breezeway. That's shown on your plan. You have a site plan elevations and floor plans of the proposed second unit above the garage. The applicant is here to share with you their thoughts of development property. I just want to point out, we have no permit in review for this. Ideally, this is the process we would like, that somebody ask for that permission up front before we start looking at building, reviewing a building permit. So that's what they have done. At P&Z, that was a lot of conversation on discrediting the application because they combined two lots to get over an acre. There were some other concerns about the impact on the PID. We did send out notifications to every property owner within 200 feet. We did have one property owner come back with an objection to this case. A property owner was also able to testify at P&Z and is also here tonight as well. But that's the basis of the application. The action taken by P&Z, there was a unanimous vote to deny the request. But again, the applicant is here, would like to present their case, and then the opposition theirs as well. Stand for any questions as far as staff review goes. The garage is not taller than the main structure. Again, it from the development standards for this, it's in compliance to bring forward for P&Z and council consideration. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
This time I'd ask the property owner if they'd like to speak to this matter.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Okay, I am the property owner. I own the property along with my daughter and my son-in-law. And we purchased the property last year in June. And he brought up the fact that the lots are combined. That also confused me at first, because when the lot was for sale, it was for sale as one lot, 118A, which is about 1.8 acres. But all the maps we were getting from the real estate broker showed lots 118 and 119. So I contacted the assessor's office to ask, you know, is it one lot, is it two lots? And then they sent a plat map, that shows that it was surveyed and it was actually one lot. So when we purchased it, we didn't purchase two lots and combine them, we purchased one lot. And the reason we purchased it is I had been reading that resort communities were having trouble with, VRBOs and not having enough housing for employees. And we were looking at wanting to build a house and have an apartment that we could rent full-time to somebody who was employed by Angel Fire, so that we would have somebody living on the property. And that was always our intention. So my daughter and I came and we started looking at properties zoned multifamily, because we knew that we wanted into residencies. And it came to my understanding that the properties in the West Village that were zoned multifamily were really intended to be for larger units, not just 2 units. And that if we looked at single family properties, that those would we could actually build a second unit. So I contacted Carol Baker, I contacted the HOA to see, well, is it actually allowed? And we talked about it, she said, yes, it's allowed, and she sent me an email to confirm that. It said garage apartments are allowed if it's attached to the existing home with a breezeway or located on another lot. And so we designed the house to be attached, the garage to be attached with a breezeway to the house. And we did that before making an offer. So I did that email on the 24th of May. We, found the lot, made the offer on the 30th of May, and we closed in July. And so then we started, the plans. And a friend of my son-in-law's is an architect, so he was drawing up the plans, and he contacted the Planning and Zoning Committee and said, well, wait a minute, it looks like it may not be allowed. And so then we found out that we needed to do a conditional use permit, so we filed the conditional use permit. And we also he looked up and said that the R1 zoning requirements do allow for a conditional use permit to allow for a separate ADU. So that's where we are. So, do you have any questions?
I have a question. So, and I'll state, I chair the architectural committee for AFPO, so I don't remember your packet. We get a lot of submissions through there, some of which get built and some don't, so I don't recall this one offhand. The Breezeway covenant only exists in some locales, but is that the correct process? Is the accessory dwelling unit municipal code requires a conditional use permit before approval? Is that standard? Sorry, and it wasn't meant so much for you, it's on,
And Mr. Mayor, members of council, yes, there was amendments to the codes, I think in 2020 or 2019. To allow this option, there was comments about being able to provide it. So council came up with some development standards, minimum lot size for considerations, particularly in the R1 zoning districts. And so that's why there were percentages allowances on this accessory structure not being overwhelming the main structure. So all those design standards came about maybe 4 or 5 years ago, yes. But our development standards don't require a breezeway or anything like that. Our standards are a little different from some of the covenants. But from our code review, minimum lot size is the first one, if they're even eligible to apply. You have seen some of these off of Panorama, the Duns came in for a request and they went through the same process as well. They showed us their floor plan for the unit above the garage. We compared it with the main structure. We looked at the acreage for their lot. It's over an acre as well, so that we could process an application.
okay. I just asked, it sounds like then, I haven't reviewed your design standards as much for that, but mostly what AFPO is looking at is the connection requirement is there, and then generally, we will only allow kitchenettes. In other words, it can't be 2 separate single-family homes on one single-family lot, but my understanding, Ms. Baker is no longer with architectural committee, she's moved out of town. But if that was all reviewed, I'm not sure what the issue is. Lot combinations are
Yeah,
exceedingly common up here and garage apartments as well. We've
Yeah.
seen several of, but thank you for the clarification, Santos, on the minimum sizes.
yeah, because I have heard him nail that.
Sure.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for consideration.
Evening, Mayor, Council, Manager, Clerk. I'm Mark Manley. I'm gonna speak initially here as just the individual property owner from across the street. As you know, the ordinance, the purpose of which the R1 district is created is to provide areas for low-density, single-family residential development, allowing 2 habitable units, like Councilor Crane just mentioned, on 1 lot is inconsistent with this purpose and intent. The applicant is proposing to build something other than a low-density, single-family home, and that can be done in R2 or R3. The standards for a conditional use permit in R1 include architectural compatibility, adding a rental apartment above the detached garage does not align with the primary purpose of R1, which again is for single-family residence. Allowing a standalone rental apartment above the garage effectively doubles the density. And it again alters the single-family character of that street. This would be a bad precedent, undermining R1 and its purpose. Maintaining the integrity of zoning regulations is an important and orderly development and ensures confidence for builders and homeowners to come. While R1 allows for an ADU as a conditional use, this is not meant to be a standalone apartment. That operates as a second separate dwelling unit and again violates the intent of the provision. When you buy a home, especially in Angel Fire, you hope that the homes to come increase your property's value, not damage or lessen them. When I moved here 4 years ago, I researched and specifically purchased in R1 because I wanted to be in single family, in and among single family homes. And finally, before I change my hats, this applicant has not made any changes to the original application that was unanimously denied by P&Z. There is nothing before the council that justifies reconsideration of the application, and the P&Z unanimous denial indicates a strong opposition based on valid planning principles. Now I'd like to very quickly just switch hats as the Resorts Council and as a non-voting member of the PID. All the lots on San Juan Drive, they're all PID lots. And a great number of these lots are severely delinquent. The PID and the resort are working together pursuant to agreement to rehabilitate these lots, to get them into the hands of people that can pay the PID going forward to develop these lots. And as you all know, the PID is in a precarious financial position currently. So I would hate to see this council devalue the lots by setting a very bad precedent here, making the job of rehabilitation that much more difficult. Thanks.
May I?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay, with respect to the bid, our bid is paid on our loan. I'd like to point out that for Article A, the R1 Single Family Residential District, under 910A-3 conditional uses, it said on lots of 1 acre or more, one detached or attached accessory living quarter may be added within 100 feet. So it can be either detached or it can be attached. So it's not, you know, I think that our ADU complies with that. So, thank you.
I'm certainly not sure the intent of the attaching, and sorry, this was a review more for council. The attaching covenant, which again doesn't exist everywhere, but there is some level of attachment in which this all becomes one single family home. In other words, the breezeway, I think the intent there is to say this is one structure. Would we deny an application for somebody that wanted a kitchen on their main floor and a kitchenette in their basement? Cause I know we
Speak
have
to that.
built and approved those.
It's 2 kitchens.
So, but if they're both attached in one structure, can you only have one kitchen in one structure? Or can you have 6 kitchens in one structure?
You asking me? Cause I can answer.
The applicant is intending to create 2 habitable units on 1 lot. And they've told you that they intend to rent it. That is, again, goes against the purpose of R1. It's the absolute reason I bought in R1.
So from a staff perspective, we're looking at 1 kitchen on 1 lot to make it a dwelling unit. So if somebody came in with 2 within the main structure, we would advise them, we can't issue that because it's 2, whether it's in the detached garage, attached garage, or in the basement and main level. The moment we see 2 kitchens on the same lot, that triggers more questions for our review. And so either that applicant goes through this process for the conditional use for that second kitchen, or they revise the plan to remove it. So from our staff perspective, that's how what we've been looking at is the definition of a dwelling unit has these certain elements. The main element that distinguishes it is a kitchen. So that may differ with some of the covenants on how things are, whether it's attached by a breezeway or what have you, but from our perspective, if we see 2 on the same lot, we're supposed to, now that this option is available and that they have at least an acre to pursue it, that would be our recommendation for them if they want to proceed with that second kitchen.
And I apologize for the hypothetical detour, but if one was a kitchen and one was a kitchenette, is
Our
it true
code
that same?
calls for kitchens. I don't know that it really defines out for kitchenettes and kitchens. It talks about cooking surfaces and things of that nature as opposed to, is it a kitchen or a kitchenette? And I don't think that really matters in our view. It's, if you're now microwave on a counter, that's, you know, but if there's a cooking surface, stove, which in this instance, it's clear there are 2 kitchens on the property. So with respect to your hypothetical, that would be our analysis in doing the review of that permit. Does it trigger enough to be 2 kitchens? And if so, is this an option available for that applicant to consider or not? And if it's not, then we would look at plans that shows 1 kitchen.
No, I appreciate the clarification. I'm just trying to figure out where that code triggers.
Yes,
And you mentioned there's been applications like this before in the past.
there has in the R1s. I think the most recent one that you saw was the Duns on Panorama. And it was because they wanted a mother-in-law's quarters and they wanted the extra kitchen for the mother-in-law to standalone structure. And it was not connected by a breezeway, but our code does say so long as it's within proximity. So that's why we don't have a preference if it's got a breezeway, if it's attached or not, as opposed to some of the covenants that have some language like that. But yes, the most recent one was the Duns, yes.
So this is 1.8 acres,
Correct, and the minimum requirement is 1.
okay? And is it 1 lot or 2?
It is 1 lot.
1 lot.
So if you look at the deed, which is what we request on the submittal, it's lot 118A. And so we based all the notifications off that combined area to go 200 feet out to notify all property owners.
So I guess the intent to purchase these lots was based on a belief that this would be approved?
I don't want to speculate as to why somebody purchased a property. I think the applicant would be more inclined to answer that.
Is, one more question.
Oh, sorry.
Is the process of notifying the neighboring properties and the responses, is that a condition in determining?
It's a requirement, so that everybody's aware that, hey, there's a conditional use or a zoning change on the property, this instance is conditional use. And so we sent out a letter to all the property owners with the same packet information you have. It's a site plan, elevations with a narrative, which lot on a map that shows, we highlighted in red. There are some municipalities that put a circle of 200 feet and then everybody's getting confused. Oh, the village is trying to buy my lot. No. Because you're just in the notification boundary. So that's just a standard throughout. And we had, out of the 14 applicants, one in opposition who actually came to testify. But we didn't receive any other phone calls or emails, which was listed on the notification. If you have questions or concern, here's the case number and here's the main number at the front desk.
Do you also know what the factor was with P and Z's negative recommendation?
The biggest factor was that they had combined the lots and they felt that was not,
But, okay, I'm sorry, are these lots combined or?
They are.
Not?
the lots have been combined.
Previously, before this owner?
It's irrelevant to us whether it was with this owner or the previous owner. The fact is that it cleared the 1 acre threshold. So a lot of the conversations at P and Z was that the lot had been combined. And they felt that that was not the intent for a conditional use to be considered on these properties. That it should be looked at the original subdivision and how the lots had been originally platted. That in addition to the comments you heard from the opposition on the character of the neighborhood. But from the P and Z's perspective, you had 2 or 3 active members talking about the combination of the lots was something that they did not look favorably at. Did you have another question?
That was gonna be my question, Joe. I wanted to understand why it was unanimous denial from a P and Z commission.
I want to say most of the commissioner, out of the 5 commissioners, 3 of the commissioners spoke. And it wasn't a short conversation. It was pretty lengthy. And considerations from the opposition as well, that was stated. At P and Z, I think pretty much mirror the conversations that he shared with you today at council too, so. And then there was a vote and it was a unanimous vote.
So the PID doesn't speak to whether or not this is allowed. This is all ordinance and covenants.
Correct.
But the ask is, or the opposition is that by allowing this on a combined lot, it will devalue those lots. But if this precedent is set, won't it make it harder to do construction on PID lots moving forward? In other words, if we rule now that PID lots that have been combined do not qualify for accessory dwelling units, won't that necessarily devalue all of the existing PID lots? Because people like this would say, oh, I can't build accessory dwelling units on that.
I can't answer that. I just also know, just Commissioner Weeks, just to follow up. At the end of the conversation, it was advised and recommended that staff look at amending the code. To somehow reevaluate if somebody combines a lot, not to be allowed to come forward with a conditional use permit. Staff can't wrap its head right now at the moment of what that ordinance would look like. Because it conflicts with Title 10, which talks about administrative replats and lot combinations. And trying to blend that with the Title 9, that was the last ask. As far as the conversations about this application, there was, I don't want to de-emphasize that there was a heavy emphasis because the lot had been combined, that's members of the commission had asked staff to look at how we somehow just not make that an eligible criteria for this type of request. And I want to say about 3 of the members did speak pretty heavily about that, 3 out of the 5.
I would like to again point out that I did not combine the lot. I bought a lot. We can share this. This is from the assessor's office. And that's the plat map showing that the previous owner was selling us a lot that was 1.8 acres. And then in answer to your question, what assurance did we have that the ADU would be allowed? I just kind of took it at face value when I contacted the HOA and they said, yes, that was kind of the authority. I didn't really ask anybody else. I didn't pursue it beyond that. I just felt that gave me the assurance, and then we went ahead and purchased single family lot. Do you have any other questions for me?
No, I don't think so.
One more questions on those, the Dunn lot, correct me if I'm wrong, my memory may be off, but that was a combined lot as well, was it not?
Again, we don't.
It may have, the individual pieces may have each been over an acre, but I believe
So
that
when we
lot
look,
was combined.
when we looked at that application, we looked at the deed and the declarations, and the site plan shows it to be over an acre. Again, our review isn't, was it a combined lot or not? It's. The code says it must be a minimum of an acre to even be considered. So once it either hits that mark or it doesn't. How it hits that mark, staff doesn't have an opinion on. Was it the previous owner? Was it this owner? Was it 3 owners ago? Was it a combined lot, or was it originally platted this way? You know, when the council made these amendments, and this makes sense to have it at least at a minimum, because not every property is located off water and sewer. It might be water, but then you need a septic facility. Well, at least having a minimum acre to be considered, if you are going into a septic system, you've got the proper spacing for your leach fields, things of that nature. So, in the Dunn's instance, again, our review was, is it or is it not an acre? Right. It was, so we moved forward with that application.
Mr. Santos,
Yes.
Mr. Martinez. Within the code, something that's listed as a conditional use, there is no guarantee or certainty that those uses will be allowed, even though they are listed within the code. Is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, that is correct. That's why it's listed as a conditional use. Because it's a purview discretion of public hearings, whether or not that application should be approved. So that's why you see it in that section of the development standards. Yes.
That's my question.
Oh, I know a lot of conditional use permits we voted on in the past had a time limit on them.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, conditional use, the purview of a conditional use before council is pretty broad. You did a conditional use permit for the Fisher and Gravel at 64. It's a 24-month permit, and at the end of 24 months, the fence has to be gone, everything like that. There are other conditional uses like Ace Hardware. You had a conditional use for their storage containers, and you required that the containers match the facades of the main structure. So you have flexibility to put reasonable conditions on an application. One of those being a timeline. Just from a staff perspective, I don't know how you can monitor a timeline on an accessory dwelling unit. But if there are other conditions the council felt appropriate on the site plan or in the elevations, again, that's well within your purview to consider. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, one more question. Mr. Martinez, how frequently does, in your experience, does the council vote differently than the P and Z commission?
There's two parts to that. This council, I don't think has ever disagreed with actions by a P and Z. Previous councils, it's rare, but they do. But most of the time, an application that gets a favorable or a negative recommendation from P and Z, normally that recommendation would be followed through by the council. But I will say that it really depends on that council. when that application is being considered. I did see when I was looking in the 07 and 08 minutes on a different project where P and Z had recommended approval of, there was an application for a request to paint a roof that was in non-compliance with the color standards. And P and Z had recommended approval, but council recommended denial. So I have seen it go the other way, but it's quite rare that you see the boards out of sync. They normally do vote together.
But it does happen.
It does happen, that's correct.
Mr. Martinez, I think one concern I have is, from what I'm hearing, again, this, and I apologize for not being more informed on this. But if P and Z is using the lot combination as the reason to deny, I would have to agree that it's a single lot. It was purchased as a single lot, not that it matters, but once a lot has been combined, it is a single lot. I don't think that that's a factor personally. And I would ask council to send this back to P and Z to reconsider.
Mr. Mayor, the purview of this application, you can defer it back. You can take action on it now. You could hold it for more information, but deferring it back to P and Z as well within your discretion for this application.
If there wasn't, if that's what you're attesting, that's the basis for their decision.
It was the majority of the conversation. The other items that were brought up by the opposition were stated at the hearing, but that if staff was instructed to also look at amending the code, then I believe then that's a heavy factor in the consideration for a negative recommendation.
So that they recommended that you amend the code as well.
Correct.
So amending the code on combinations of lots, there are many now accessory dwelling units on combined lots. So we would go, the ask would be from P and Z for us to go back and retroactively change it and allow those, or?
No, well, what ended up happening is if the code does change and there's an except like the Duns, if the Duns was a combined lot, that's now non-conforming.
Right.
And so now you're in the other provisions of non-conformity because it was previously approved and legal, and now it's no longer considered standard. And so the provisions of our non-conforming ordinances, you can't make that bigger. And if you sell it, you've lost your non-conforming rights. So that's a big concern the staff has in looking at matching a Title 10, which is a subdivision regs, to a Title 9 ask with the development standards that you have. Sorry.
And I think it seemed like the spirit of the conditional use permit that was looked at and, allowed, was, to be able to, because 90% of the development is half-acre lots. So it would kind of be, to amend it would kind of erase the spirit of what this conditional use permit was meant to do.
Again, that was the ask from P and Z. So in my opinion, if P and Z argued substantially on the fact that it was a combination lot and then asked staff to look at amending the code, staff feels that was a heavy reason for objecting to recommending favorable recommendation on this application. Not to discount the other arguments that were made, but I would feel if we were then asked to make consideration to change the code, that's a heavy part of the consideration is why they recommended.
Well, and then necessarily we would be devaluing any lots that had already been combined. Wouldn't we? If people had combined lots 20 years ago.
Again, from the staff's perspective, that's a lot to review. If we're gonna go in that direction, there's a lot of bases that need to be touched. Councilman Weeks just acknowledged, now you get into a non-conforming category for all those that were approved. How do we have, and I've seen codes written different ways to address certain uses. Again, I just don't know. I'd rather get more direction, if that's the direction council would like staff to consider. All I know is that was the recommendation from P and Z.
So just because P and Z feels that the code should be changed, and they might be correct, that shouldn't influence this situation.
Again, council member, the discretion you have for this application is pretty broad. You can take action on this favorably, unfavorably, you can hold this case, you can divert this case. You can approve it with conditions, all of those are fair game once it gets to council.
I support sending it back.
With the language that
Yes.
the dirt, as long as it's above the minimum, can't be a disqualifying factor.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, another option might be for the council to vote to postpone. And in the next meeting, request the chairman of the P and Z Commission to come and speak. I mean, although, Mr. Martinez, I feel very confident in his assessment. He is giving you his perspective of the conversation versus, actual words from the people that made the decision. So that may be another option for you to explore.
I'll just add that I was on P and Z whenever this change was made to R1 for requesting a conditional use permit. And the 1 acre being a stipulation of that. And so the issue I have, I don't want to discount P and Z in their efforts here because I know it was a deliberated meeting, but I just don't think it can be disqualified on that basis. Obviously, there's other reasons to deny a conditional use, but if that's the main, I would rather send it back to P and Z with the understanding that the ordinance is written and this is a 1+ acre lot. So that's, in my opinion, not a factor to deny. And if they have other arguments, I'd be happy to hear them, but it sounds to me like that's the.
In the opinion of staff, that was the big driving, and again, I would reiterate, if it wasn't, why would staff be directed to consider amending the code? So that's why staff feels that was a heavy consideration in this application. There were still other factors that were considered, but that was a heavy part of the
And
argument.
I do want to respect the opinion of our planning and zoning commission. But
And if that's the discretion of this council to defer it, remand it back to P and Z, we will take the application, we'll work with the applicant. If they feel that there are changes to present, we'll send out notices again to all the property owners. And we'll try to work on getting that scheduled if that's the desire of this council.
So can we use Mayor Pro Tem Howe's motion to remand this back to P and Z with the clarification? Can I second that, or is that an official motion?
He'll need to make he already has a motion on the floor, so he'll need to make a motion to amend the current motion. We'll have to vote on the amendment, and then we can vote on the amended motion. So you'd have to.
Okay, so I will make a motion
to amend the current motion.
I will make a motion for item A, discussion action, approve, RAS 2024-55, granting a conditional use permit, amending this to be remanded back to the Planning and Zoning Commission for reconsideration, without considering the lot combination as a disqualifying factor.
Second.
You had the easier job.
if you will roll call, vote on the amendment.
Okay, so roll call vote on the amendment.
Yes.
Mr. Howe,
Aye.
Mr. Humbert,
Aye.
Mr. Crane.
Aye.
Pass.
Mr. Weeks.
Okay, Mr. Weeks, sorry. Pass.
And now,
We have to vote on the amended.
Now you have to vote on the amended.
We're ready to vote on the amended motion.
Okay. Roll call vote on the amended motion. Mr. Howe,
Aye.
Mr. Humbert,
Aye.
Mr. Weeks,
Aye.
Mr. Crane,
Aye.
pass.
Moving on to item B. We have motion for discussion action to approve resolution 2024-57 amendment to the site plan.
I make a motion for discussion action, approve resolution 2024-57. Amendment to site plan.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Manager Weir. This application had been approved a year and a half ago for new townhome construction behind the bank off Winter Park. The amendments that are brought before you is there's a utility conflict on Winter Park for one of the buildings that was being proposed. So they've requested to, on your site plan, you'll see they've removed that building. They've also changed the orientation of the other building along Winter Park to adjust and accommodate for that. There was an access easement to the bank's parking lot to get into the property as well. They've removed that to provide additional guest parking. There was a curve within the internal drive of that site that they've straightened out as well. They've added language of where the landscaping would be for that lot. And then along North Angel Fire Road, previously the site plans showed a large rectangle. And the envelope of that large rectangle remains. It's just that they split it into, instead of 2 large rectangles, it's 4 rectangles, but the envelope on the outer boundary remains. Those are the amendments before you on the site plan. P and Z reviewed this and recommended approval. Staff, any questions you may have?
Questions? Are we ready for our vote?
Roll call vote on item B. Mr. Howe,
Aye.
Mr. Hubbard,
Aye.
Mr. Weeks,
I think I need to abstain. Is that what, or recuse myself? Recuse myself on this. Abstain. Yeah, abstain.
and Mr. Crane,
Aye.
pass.
All right, moving on to item C. Can you get a motion for discussion action item to approve resolution 2024-56 final fiscal year 25 budget?
I make a motion for discussion action, approve resolution 2024-56 final FY 25 budget.
Second.
Manager Weir?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, council, I have submitted to you a detailed listing of the budget. This is in a little bit different format than the prior report that I presented on the interim budget. This is actually out of the state's website where you submit budgets. And what the report does, it does give a detailed listing by fund and by GL account number. And there are basically 3 columns that I want you to consider. Column 1 is the interim budget. That was a budget you previously approved and was submitted to the state and was approved by the state. The second column is the final budget, which are changes that we or reflect changes that we had to make in order to number one, get to update the information for the actual cash balances. We did have a few items that we discovered were left off the interim budget. And they've been added, and those changes are shown in the adjustment column. We put that in there to make sure it was easy for you to identify what had been changed. So that you could ask questions about any of the changes that you can ask questions about anything, but we just felt like since you'd already approved the interim, your focus would probably be on any changes. The majority of the changes you'll see are simply cash balances, reserve calculations, because we had to estimate those in the interim budget. And of course, now we have final numbers. Like I said, there were a few additional expenses that we included that were either overlooked or new items that came up for consideration in that period between the submission of the interim and this final budget. But with your approval, we're ready to submit the budget to the state tomorrow.
The largest change is the 600,000, and that is the loan that was executed for the remodeling of this.
That's
building.
right. It was left out of, it was actually in last year's budget and the money didn't get spent. We barred it into last year's budget, but the money didn't get spent. And then it didn't get added to this year's budget as part of the interim, but that was the largest single item. There are some summary numbers for the larger accounts. You'll see, they're bold below, so there's total for each of the departments and each of the funds. But whenever you have a fund with multiple departments, there are some summary numbers. For example, print these with page numbers, I apologize, but about halfway through the stack, you'll see this page and you'll see numbers in red. That's the totals for the general fund, which is our largest fund. So you can see the total expenditures for the general fund, the ending cash balance, and the change in cash. So for example, on that, for the final budget, we will have for just the general fund, $13,521,687 in expenditures budgeted, which will give us an ending cash balance of $8,314,522. That is a change in our net cash position of $3,579,687. So basically, that means we're spending $3,579,000 more than we're bringing in. There are rules that DFA looks at that if additional expenditure has to be for one-time expenditures, it can't be for reoccurring expenses. And that number, as you'll see, the number actually went down a little bit in the final, and the interim budget was approved, so I don't see any challenges with us doing those expenditures. And based on our cash position, as we may have said, or we'll find out in on the 30th, the auditors, we will have a short meeting because the auditors want to present to the council the audit that was approved by the state. And what you'll probably hear, part of that is a recommendation to spend down our cash balances. We're actually going to get an audit finding for having too much cash in lodger stacks.
Can't get rid of it.
Ryan,
Anybody have any more questions for Manager Ware?
this supplemental you handed out was related to the
That's
budget.
just a summary by fund. I thought it might be easy to look at that. I didn't think of that until after I said, oh, I should have given them this. So
Thank you.
those are summary numbers by fund.
Roll call vote on item C. Mr. Howe,
Aye.
Mr. Hummert,
Aye.
Mr. Weeks,
Aye.
pass.
Moving on to item D, if I could please get a motion for discussion action approved ordinance 2024-02 traffic violation fee increases.
I'll make a motion for discussion action, approve ordinance 2024-02 traffic violation fee increases.
Second.
Manager Ware?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Chief Ogre, apologize. He had activity that he had to attend to and wasn't able to attend. But I think these numbers are what we've talked about. They are now publicized. We did not get any feedback from the public. The one that was controversial, let's say, was item 12-6-7.3, which is stopping for a school bus, and it is listed at 350, and that's how it was publicized. And again, I know that the council thought it should be higher at 500, but there was concerns, that 500 is the highest you can go, and there were concerns about whether it may be the cause of, if we had a lot of those, a class action lawsuit, other concerns with the courts. And the police chief felt like 350 was the right number to show we're serious about not passing school buses, but to not put us in any legal jeopardy.
Any further questions?
Don't pass the school bus. please.
Roll call vote on item D. Mr. Howe,
Aye.
Mr. Humbert,
Aye.
Mr. Weeks,
Aye.
pass.
This time, please,
Mr. Crane.
Oh,
So-
Mr. Crane.
Yep, you technically have enough, but.
guess unanimous, you know.
That's why that's why I stopped.
Aye, yeah.
Okay, Bill, it's your turn next.
moving on to item E. If I can get a motion for discussion and action to approve RFP 2024-010 attorney service selection.
Make a motion for discussion action, approve RFP 2024-010 attorney service selection.
Second,
Who's second?
Bill.
Manager Ware.
Mr. Mayor, yes, so we did an RFP for attorney services. We had 3 applicants. You can see on the staff recommendation, the scoring by our committee. I will tell you that personally, I was in favor of the Stelzner firm. There were some challenges with the scoring. Number one, the Koppler firm actually scored higher, being a minority firm, and the Stelzner firm actually has more minorities than the Koppler firm, so I'm sure that was just lack of direction in the scoring. The other item is that it was unusual, the scoring was a little heavily weighted towards cost, which is usually when you do an RFP, it's based on ability and not so much cost. Those 2 items are basically the difference between the Stelzner and the Koppler firm. But because that's what the committee rated, I stand prepared to go by the committee's recommendation.
I will say that our preference, the manager and I's discussion of the firms considered Stelzner. The reason that they would have been our first pick mainly has to do with their history and success in litigating water rights. And we feel like that's gonna be one of the biggest issues coming forward. Aside from that, I do wanna, again, just as we respect the P and Z committee, I wanna respect the process and the rating system. But I do just wanna point out that that was our reasoning for favoring the Stelzner firm.
So as the motion is made, then a motion to approve will be to approve the Koppler firm.
That is the recommendation, the staff recommendation was a Koppler firm. That is correct.
I think it should.
I will tell, Mr. Mayor, I will tell the council that, you do have the authority, to pick whichever firm you want. This is, you're not required to go by what the evaluations are. You have the authority, but I wanted you to be aware of my feelings in this, but I also want to.
Sorry, I didn't understand.
I also,
I'll second that.
Yeah.
I also want to, respect, the process. And that's why I wanted you to know, for your consideration, but, yeah. The committee did choose a Koppler firm.
So, and I would ask that the council amend the motion to name the firm that they're selecting. And we can vote up and down on each one if you would prefer.
Would you say that again, Mayor?
Well, the way that the motion is read was to, as it's presented on the agenda, is to approve the attorney service selection. So So I guess that, I said, if we approve that, it would be the Coppler firm.
Right.
Right.
If it's voted down, then we could bring a motion to vote on another.
Okay,
I'll leave it at that. But yes, this motion is to approve the Coppler firm.
okay.
With the discussion, you know, I feel water rights is top priority. And what our challenges are, hopefully.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Weeks, I agree. And, you know, I don't have, I mean, I have some experience with the Coppler firm. They were legal counsel when I was previously with the village. And even during that time frame, we used a separate legal counsel to deal with water rights issues. I don't know the extent of that. I wasn't heavily involved, so there may have been some involvement in Coppler, but I know that Canepa Liddell, I think was the name of the firm that did all of our litigation for water rights. I did send an email to Canepa Liddell and asked them to put in for this RFP, and we got no response from them. But Stelzner does have extensive experience with Bernalillo County and other major municipalities, large municipalities. And because of that experience, that's why one of the primary reasons why I believe that firm would better represent the village.
Mayor, I agree with what you're proposing.
We're ready to have a vote on, the motion is to approve, the current motion is to approve the Coppler law firm.
I'll call up the vote on item E to approve Coppler as the law firm. Mr. Howe,
Nay,
Mr. Hubbard,
No,
Mr. Weeks,
Nay.
Mr. Crane,
Nay.
Dale,
So at this time, I would ask for a motion to approve RFP 2024-010 attorney service selection to name the Stelzner, let me find the full name of the firm.
Stelzner, Paul Burton, and Flores.
Mr. Mayor, point of order,
Yes.
that's not allowed, it's not an agenda action item, it would have to be presented to council as a separate action item to appoint that new law firm, because you've already voted on this motion. It's already gone to council as a vote, so it would have to become a new action item, a new agenda item.
I think she might be correct. We will be having a special council meeting on Tuesday. And I would ask the clerk to add that to the agenda. So we will be moving on. Item F. Discussion action approved visitor center lease agreement.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Before the motion is made, I will point out that I will be abstaining from any discussion or vote for two reasons. One, I have been in discussions with the resort for doing the makeover renovation on Frontier Plaza, and that is part of this discussion. And I will also let you know that my wife is in discussions with the resort releasing the middle two units of Frontier Plaza after the renovations are complete. I will say that the lease agreement that my wife is looking at reflects the exact same rates and language as the one considered for the village.
Did she sign it?
Good question.
All right, Mayor Pro Tem Aller. If you would.
Make a motion for discussion action, approve visitor center lease agreement.
I'll second.
I'm looking forward to moving our visitor center
back to where it belongs. If you look at Google Maps right now, Google Maps still has the visitor center at Frontier Plaza. We need the space. We've got 2 new people hiring on in the tourism visitor center department in the next month. I've only got current workspace for 2 of us right now, and that's barely getting by. It'll be great to have a visitor center that's right there at Frontier Park, where we're managing events and doing all the other things that's highly visible to the community, that has parking, has a park right next to it, food trucks and everything else. It's a great location for it. I'm looking for your approval.
So during the time of the visitor center was in Frontier Plaza before, about 8 months out of the year, we had over 100 visitors a day. Unfortunately, this space is not nearly large enough for parking for people, for RVs, and for staff. So I highly recommend moving this back to Frontier Plaza.
Great.
I agree with everything Mayor Pro Tem said. My only concern was section C, the tenant responsibilities, which it looks like has been tweaked a little bit. I'm sorry, let me clarify. Section 3. Paragraph C. Tenant should be responsible for utilities related to premises, whether or not separately metered as described in section 6 below. Tenant should also be responsible for garbage removal, parking area maintenance, snow removal, basic landscaping to keep the grounds around the premises in good shape. Without the need for manicure upgrade. I think that was the ad since the last time I've seen this. And routine maintenance of the HVAC system, which has changed. Repairs or replacement of the HVAC system should be the responsibility of the landlord unless such repairs or replacements are necessitated by misuse or negligence by the tenant. Are we gonna be responsible for removing snow from all of Frontier Plaza, both the main parking lot and the one to the south?
Or are we just talking about the covered deck?
Council, I'm struggling I want to make sure, because we went through so many iterations.
Sure. My
If you
apologies.
give me a moment,
Yep.
I'm not sure you're looking at the most recent. But to answer your question, no.
That was my,
Yeah, the village will not be responsible for clearing the entire parking lot. Now, that may occur because it's more efficient for simply one
One
truck
truck.
to do so, but the other tenants, along with the resort, would certainly work together to make sure it's completely equitable.
Wouldn't it be more organized if they just came out with a shared fee for the plowing service? To split equally?
I would leave it up to the council or mayor and manager to propose, but we will work with whatever you suggest.
And then I guess lawn maintenance, what's that consist of?
Rudimentary weeding, just so that I imagine you'll want to do more than had intended by the language, just to make the visitor center appealing for everybody that comes there.
It's just like the flower bed.
I tried to add, that was the purpose of adding the language saying, look, it's not something that you need to manicure. It doesn't,
premises in good shape and free of weeds,
Yeah.
without the need for manicured upkeep. I get that. I think it was the snow removal, just because it's a fairly substantial lot when both are
Yes.
included, which is what we want, obviously, to Mayor
Yes.
Pro Tem's point. We need the parking.
Yes.
So is there a revision on your?
Apologies, I am-
No, you're fine.
And I will just add that I have asked Manager Weir, once we have legal counsel, that before we sign, even if council approves this contract, I want it to be presented to legal counsel before.
Yeah.
Being officially accepted.
100%. Because also on the terms, I think and the last language says landlord may terminate this lease upon 30 days notice to tenant. That's just a broad sentence. I mean, yeah, but I think it could probably be some
You'd like a longer runway than that.
Maybe.
Okay.
Or, yeah, I think it, I mean, to me, it would be, to terminate, a lease renewal is what I understood. I mean, is that what it's trying to say? A
Which
renewal of
section
a-
are we in?
Section 2. I mean, it may be misreading that, but it would, I would think that.
No, you're not.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's just period.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, if council manager, mayor, if you would like more runway on that, I can take that back and we'll look to extend the 30-day period. I don't think that would be a problem.
Okay.
So functionally, do we vote on this now or wait until the Tuesday for the weeks?
I wouldn't be opposed if council chose to, because we had so many revisions just today. If we wanted to iron this out. And give council a little bit more time with it, I don't think there's anything pressing.
Well, I think, Mr. Manley was sort of willing to make all the changes, but if we're gonna vote on a document, it should probably be the one inclusive of all the changes.
I would be happy to make those changes this evening, if that changes anything for you all. It's entirely up to you. I believe you can, these are very minor changes. You could vote to approve contingent on the language being acceptable. Otherwise, in any event, I will have the document ready for your council as soon as they are brought on board.
So, Mr. Mayor, what I prefer to do in this situation, since there are some additional items that need to be negotiated, I'd rather present a final draft to council for approval and give council some time to review the final draft. So my recommendation would be a no vote on this, since we already have a motion on the floor. And a motion and a second, so we do need to vote. And then that will, Mr. Manley, if we can have a further discussion and the council can provide me with input, thoughts on any additional changes they'd like to see, like what kind of runway would we like? What would be reasonable? Then Mr. Manley and I can negotiate that tomorrow. And as long as we have it done by the end of the day, we'll have time to have it in the packet for next Tuesday to be approved.
Sounds good.
But as a point of order, we do have to vote
Yeah,
this
we
down.
already have
We have a motion
on
in a
the floor,
second.
so it has to be.
So are we voting on the item or are we voting on a no vote?
We're voting as.
We're voting on approval of this,
Okay.
which my recommendation is not to approve.
Okay. Roll call vote on item F. Mr. Howe,
Nay.
Mr. Humbert,
Nay.
Mr. Weeks,
Nay.
Mr. Crane.
Nay.
Fair.
Moving on to item G, very good motion. The discussion of third quarter financial report. The Mexican Department of Administration.
I make a motion for discussion of the third quarter financial report to the New Mexico Department of Administration.
I'll second.
Mr. Mayor, Council, this is the third quarter report. This is for the period ending March of 24. Third quarter of the FY 24 reporting. It is a stipulation of DFA that all quarterly reports have to be presented to council. So I'm fulfilling that stipulation by doing this. I think the big thing is, basically, we got a positive report with one exception, which was a $206,000 adjustment to cash that needed to be made. And that was created by the fact that we didn't have our bank recs done. So as you know, in the last 5 months, we've done over a year's worth of bank recs. And we just didn't have the bank recs done in time to file this report timely. But we do now have all bank recs up to date and fully anticipate this being handled in the fourth quarter report, which I don't think we've received the fourth quarter report back from DFA yet, right?
No.
So, other than that, I think that if you read, all pretty much everything checked off with that exception. We did have a few funds that were expending, had expenses that exceeded revenue for those funds. But, if you look at the funds to the left, I think some of that's just seasonal, like in the roads and so on, and it wasn't, an overall issue for the entire year.
Any questions or further discussion? Then we'll move on to item H. I would like to ask for a motion to move into executive session for NMSA 10-15 1H-2 to discuss item A, Department of Workforce Solutions discrimination investigation. Item B, complaint for New Mexico whistleblower violations. Item C, tort claim, Mike and Melissa Maloney. And D, summons for the State Ethics Commission. I would ask that we move items B and C to the front of the list. And I would invite Santos Martinez to join us for items B and C. Mr. Martinez was the village manager at the time that the whistleblower complaint centers around. And item C, the tort claim. I'd like Mr. Martinez to, in the discussion, as his role in the planning and zoning department, and Mike and Melissa Maloney.
I'll make a motion to move into executive session for NMSA 10-15 1H-2. Order of discussion to be first B, complaint for New Mexico whistleblower violation. Secondly, item C, tort claim Mike and Melissa Maloney. Number 3, item A, Department of Workforce Solutions discrimination investigation. And item 4D, summons for State Ethics Commission.
Second.
Okay. Yes, sir. Mr. Howe,
Aye.
Mr. Weeks,
Aye.
Mr. Crane,
Aye.
Mr. Humphrey.
Aye.
I'm